Women in Print Alliance is dedicated to connecting, empowering, and advancing women in the print industry. As part of Printing United Alliance, we're fostering a more inclusive future through advocacy, education, and networking opportunities that connect women across the entire industry. Join us as an individual to grow your career, expand your network, and access exclusive resources, or enroll your entire organization to show your commitment to supporting women in print. Become a member today at womeninprintalliance.org and help us shape the future of print.
Welcome to Her Imprint, part of the Impressions Exchange. I'm Denise Gustafson, your host. This podcast celebrates the remarkable women who are transforming the printing industry. We'll explore their journeys, from challenges to triumphs, and share the stories that leave a lasting imprint. Today, I have with me Janey Walker. She's founder for Classic Mailing Solutions. So, Janey, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Such a pleasure to finally get a chance to sit down and chat with you. So, to get us started, could you tell us a little bit about Classic Mailing Solutions?
Absolutely. I have been working in the mailing industry for 35 years, and my career started at TRW in the credit union, where I managed the administrative services department. From there, I was recruited to go to work at United Presort Services. I worked there in sales for over 10 years. Through a series of acquisitions, the company ended up being owned and operated by Pitney Bowes. I worked there for a number of years. I worked in the sales department, which I absolutely loved. Had the opportunity towards the end of my career to move over with one of our largest customers, and I did that. And once I made the move, unfortunately, I figured out that the company wasn't what I had expected, and I knew that I needed to make a move. So I went into consulting, and I went to work for a court receiver on a very large letter shop that was the owners of the company just didn't like each other, and they were leaving to go out of business. And so he asked me to come in and do some consulting with him, which I did, and it was amazing. During that time, I had decided that I wanted to start my own business, but I wasn't really sure the direction I was going to take it. And so during the 2.5 months working in the consultant, he gave me their CRM, and he said, I want you to begin to call the customers that we lost and ask them why they left. And it was a great experience because I was really able to hear from the customer's prospect and side, why am I not here? What have I done? And it turned out to be pricing and customer service, mostly the pricing, but they were not happy with the customer service at all. Once they started, they felt like they were just sucked into the system, and they just went along with everything. Nobody ever called them. Nobody ever offered any solutions, et cetera. And I was always very solution-based in the way that I worked with my customers. From there, I, again, just started to start my own company. And one of the gentlemen that I had contacted during the time that I was asked to say, why are you not here any longer, had asked me if I could find some data for him, which I did. And shortly after that, the 3 owners of the company that I was consulting with went back to the court and said, this is not going to work. We are not going to be able to work together. We basically don't like each other, and this is just not going to be a good fit. So I went to the court receiver and I said, what do I do? I have these 2 new customers that I brought on board, and they're ready to go with us. How do I handle that? And he said, you started your own company. Why don't you just take them with you? And I said, I'll be happy to do that if you want to get the proper documentation from the owners of this company. And he said, why would you want to do that? I said, because I'm going to do a really good job with these customers, and I don't want them coming back to me saying, this is our business. So we negotiated all of that out. I started Classic Mailing Solutions. I actually sat down, drew on a piece of paper 3 columns. First column being the things I was really good at. Second column was the things I could do, but I wasn't really good at. And the third column was the things I really suck at and I need help at. So one of them was definitely the legal side of things. So I got a very good attorney. I got a very good accountant. I found a really good marketing person to do my website, the things that I needed to get done, because I needed to move pretty quickly in getting all of this finished. And that's where I started. I worked basically on the front end with just data and getting data for this customer. But one of the things that I had found over the years in the print industry is that many times when people were working in sales and going after customers, they were interested in a tenth of a cent or a tenth of a penny in what one letter shop could offer from another. And that's where the competition came in. But there wasn't a lot of emphasis put on how can I make your life better as a customer? And there's a nickel over here on the table from the post office in terms of incentives that no one is discussing. So I started to have those conversations with the customer that I was working with. And 2 months into it, into selling data, I was coaching him on what he should be doing with his mailings. And he was going back to his letter shop. They were going through the coaching. And he came back to me and said, one day he called me literally and he said, Janey, I haven't been able to sleep. I said, what do you mean you haven't been able to sleep? And he said, I have been taking advice from you and your coaching on how I should be managing my postage. And I'm taking that information to my letter shop who has no clue, who's not done anything for me to help me in that environment. And I'm using your expertise. He said, so I want you to get my mail placed. I want you to, starting next Monday, which was a very short period of time, I'm going to send you all of my mail that you produce the data for. So it was a massive opportunity, a massive undertaking. And that's when I really was able to use the network of vendors that I had been talking to about placing mail in across the country to improve the not only the delivery times, but the postage that the customer could achieve. And from there, I built out my team of direct consultants. The initial customer that I work with, I saved him over $1 million in postage.
That's amazing.
2 years later, he sold his company for a phenomenal amount of money and made sure that we've stayed with that company. So since the start time of doing business with him, we still maintain that business today. And he later went on to start another company. He called me and we started doing business in that company as well as bringing in others. And we've never lost sight of the customer side of the business, how we can work with the customer to improve and make their lives better in a direct mail business and still bring in the postage savings in that. And we've been very effective in that
It
situation.
really is showing that you're looking for a partnership with the companies that you're working with. And that's really what is bringing the value for you and for them.
Absolutely.
You're no longer transactional at that point. You really are a partner with them to make sure everything is being done correctly, that you're saving them money in places that make sense. Maybe telling them to spend money in other places because they're going to get a better ROI on things. That's the kind of information that they're looking for because it's only going to benefit their clients that they are working with down the line.
Absolutely. We have an offering with the data as well, as I was just saying. And when you have a company that's spending huge amount of money on data, getting that mail piece in home quicker is critical to them. And so we've been able to really hone in on that, understanding the postal regulations from top to bottom and having those tough conversations with our customers on various different applications and ways that they can mail their mail, which is best for you and for your bottom line. So that to me is the most exciting thing that we do. It's fun to watch your customers grow. It's fun to see them save money and be able to put it back into their business. It's very gratifying.
Are you also doing data hygiene and making sure that the data that you're getting from them is clean, is good? Is that part of it as well?
Absolutely. We have a data arm of our business that Steve runs, and he's one of the vendors that I actually met when I was working in the consulting situation. Wonderful gentleman, and he really knows his craft very well. So we do some cleansing of the data. When it comes from him, he'll run a basic NCOA on it. And then we also have suppression lists that our customers provide, do not mail states. All of that's taken into consideration. And then when the mail is sent over to the letter shop, they'll actually do that in the process as well to run it through all of the CAS, the DPV, everything that it needs to go through to make sure that it is correct. So we also have, which we've invested in recently, our ability to cleanse our own data for those customers that are going to need that up front, because we found that with some customers, they really want to take a look at that before they even get it off and do it, because we do a thorough analysis. We've been doing our own tracking of the data through Snailworks since we started business. It's ours. We own the Snailworks, and our customers are aware of that. We pay for it for them, but it gives us the data to be able to do a lot of analytics for, because you can assume that you're going to be able to do something in a postage environment. And then when you're actually able to see it through the tracking on how you knew it was going to work, but it's really working, is very powerful. And that's given us the ability to make huge decisions for our customers that the facts are behind it.
Yeah.
It's not a theory at that point in time. And we can tell them exactly what they're going to see in delivery.
And honestly, by looking at it up front too, it might give your customer a better idea of what is going to be my deliverability, how much this actually cost us in the long run because of all the factors in terms of those things. So I do have to ask, with all of this mail knowledge, how did you get started in the first place? What made you come into the industry?
I actually started my career when I was working for TRW in the credit union, and I actually wanted desperately to be a loan officer. It's what I wanted to do. And when the company reorganized, every position in the loan officer was put in as a male figure. They gave me the administrative services department, and I cried for days. I was devastated. And the consultant that had worked with the credit union to state who they felt should go into each position took me out to lunch. And he said, Janey, I'm going to tell you something. I've watched you manage that department. I've watched you go to the PCC meetings. I've watched you learn about the industry. And he said, and you may think that they gave you a handful of sand, but I'm going to tell you, if you hold on tight enough to that, it will become diamonds. And I thought the guy was crazy. I'm like, what are you talking about? But a few months after that, Gary Myers, who was one of the owners of United Presort Services, actually came in to meet with me about commingling our mail at the credit union. And we had a great conversation. And when he left, he said, I would love for you to work with us. But he said, at some point in time, I want to hire you. And when he left, I was giggling to myself because I thought, oh, these salespeople, they're such smoozers. He has no intention of hiring me. He just wants business. And so years later, when my son finally graduated, I came back and I said, I really want to go to work for this gentleman. But I was like, I'm just going to go get my resumes. I need to find something better to do here. I bumped in cart to cart with Kay Avery at a store. And she said, what are you doing? I said, I just went and picked up my resume. And I said, I'm going to start looking for a job. She said, okay. Well, I got home, armful of groceries, and my phone is ringing off the hook. And it was Gary. And he said, do not send those resumes out. Do not do it. You come in and meet with me tomorrow. And I did. And I was just hooked. We took a walk through the facility. And at the time everything was being hand sorted, 700 people. It was crazy. And I wanted to go to work there so bad. And he took me back in his office. He said, I want to offer you a position, but what I want to say to you is I want you to go away for 2 weeks and I want you to think about what I'm offering you, because I'm going to spend a lot of money training you. And I want to make sure it's what you want. Those were the most agonizing 2 weeks of my life because I wanted that job so bad. I was ready to start right then and there. And I went back in and he asked me to put together the front office operation and the customer service and accounting, filing, etc. And I said, I'll do it, but you're going to sign a little contract with me that you promise you will put me in sales once I'm done. And he goes, that's crazy. Why would I do that? And I said, because I'm going to do such a good job for you that you're going to want to keep me there. And I don't want to stay there. So he agreed to it. And it was about 3 months, maybe 4. He put me in sales. And It was a lot of fun because he gave me 100 accounts and he said, you go out and meet with all of them. And once you're done meeting with all of them 3 times, you can start going out on sales. And it was fascinating to me when I would go out to these people and I would meet with them that they really had no idea what we did for them. They knew that we saved them in money in the commingling environment, but they had no clue what we did. So he was very smart because I learned during that period how to really position myself and the company in terms of sales because I kept hearing all the back end stuff that individuals just didn't really appreciate or know what we did. So it really taught me how to become valuable to customers, how to learn what they did, which is so critical in sales. I think people just don't pay attention to what is it that your customer really does and where do you add value in that? So
So,
that's pretty much how I got my start.
so what was it about the job that made you really want it? That made those 2 weeks so agonizing for you?
I loved the operation itself and
Okay.
going through the facility. It was fascinating to me. And I really liked the mailing industry because it's so real. There's not a lot of fluff in it. It is what it is. At the end of the day, either you're doing this and you're saving money or you're not. And so I found that to be fascinating. But I also really liked the owners of the company. I was I found it fascinating that they bought this company for $25,000. They built it up in the garage of Bruce, who owned a condominium complex, and they put it there. And they were just great people. And the staff there was just so much excitement on the floor. And people just loved what they did, and I thought, you don't see that very often in a work environment where you usually go back into operations and it's everybody's just, "Whatever, I gotta get my work done today," but there was just an electric excitement about working in that place.
But then you also knew that you wanted to go into sales. So then
Yes.
the question is, a lot of women, they might not have said, "Oh, I'm in administrative." Okay, they might not have the confidence to take that next step and say, "No, I wanna be here. I wanna go into sales." In an industry that is very male dominated, even the industry that you came from. How do you get past that to have the initiative to take that step for yourself?
I think you just hit on it. It's initiative, and there's a belief in yourself at some point that I can do this. And you just have to tune out the noise around you because there's so much noise in any position or any place you work that this is just how it is. And I guess I grew up in a home where seriously, my dad would say to us, we don't use the word can't in our house because if we used the word can't, we would find ourselves doing it. And my dad used to say to me, honey, you can do anything that you want to do. And I remember when I was working at the credit union, the first time I got a promotion, we went to lunch and I was so excited about my promotion. I was in my little business suit and all excited. And he just said, honey, I'm so worried about you. And I was like, but dad, I got this promotion. He said, no. He goes, you can do anything that you set your mind to. You're good at what you do. You believe in yourself. But he said, you're not good at politics. And you better get good at that really quick. And I had no clue what he was talking about. It just went over my head like jet fuel. And that was one of the things I had to learn really quickly is the noise that takes place within an organization. And if you take time to listen to what everybody else says and not really believe in yourself above the noise, then you're never going to give yourself the credit or even the opportunity to do it. You can talk yourself out of doing it easily.
All our
I
own
was like,
worst enemies, honestly.
absolutely. I want to do this. I've never been in sales before. I feel like I'm going to be really good at it. I know I'm going to be really good at it if I'm just given the chance. And this gentleman was willing to give me a chance. And he was amazing. We would go every Friday with the sales team and we'd play Indian poker. And then we'd get in either 1 or 2 cars on the way back, and I would ride back with Gary, and he would stop in front of Paul's Nuts and Bolts, And he'd say, quickly, give me 10 customers that would buy my nuts and bolts. And that was his way of teaching you to prospect. Who would I want to go after to bring in sales? Because that's the beginning of sales, is the prospecting.
Yeah.
And I got really good at that, but because of that. It was a great lesson from him on how to prospect. Back to your question, I just think it's tuning out the noise and really, what do you want? And there's nothing wrong with asking question of other women. How do you feel about doing this? What did you do to get to this point? And I think a lot of women are afraid to ask those questions.
I would agree.
And you just have to get bold enough to do it.
But I think it's a whole other conversation too. How do you build that confidence within yourself as a woman?
Mhm.
'Cause I think a lot of times women, you talk about imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
that a lot of women don't think that they have the skills, that they can't do the job. For whatever reason, we tend to be hard on ourselves, very hard on
Absolutely.
ourselves. And even some of the nomenclature or the verbiage that people use in terms of a woman that might be very aggressive in sales or whatnot might have a very negative connotation. But if a gentleman is doing that, he's a go-getter. There's much more positive words that are used in those situations. So it's just interesting. It's one of those things that I think all of us need to try to look at and examine.
Mhm.
We view ourselves, how we view others. Just very
Absolutely.
interesting.
I think you're absolutely correct in that. And I think one thing that tends to happen in any industry is we are not men. We have a feminine side and we have empathy and we have the ability to really connect at a very different level. And I think if you learn that early on in your career, how to utilize that, and it's to your advantage, there we go. It's to your advantage to learn what people want. How can I make your life better? Because many times I learned in my industry, we're all about cost savings. So you go into the industry or you go into a sales appointment and especially my last job, it was always like, here we are, we're wonderful, and you should want to do business with us. I tend to look at it the opposite way. How can I help you? How can I make you look good? What do you need? And you don't have to say it in those terms, but you begin to realize what's important to that individual and to the company as well. And so I think you can use those strengths without going into a situation and thinking, I've got to be the guy in the suit. I've got to be the aggressive ones. Because if you try to be something, you're not going to succeed. You just won't. And so embrace what you can do and use those skills and those talents, and you're going to go a lot longer than trying to be something that you're not.
It's like you're wearing an ill-fitting suit at that point because you're
Mhm.
putting something on. It just doesn't fit with your personality. And you're just trying to mold yourself to something that's just not going to work long term.
Absolutely.
You could do it short
Mhm.
term, probably with no problem. But the long
Absolutely.
term and for the long haul, that's a whole different story. Now, you had some phenomenal mentors to you that
I did.
invested in your training. They were probably critical for your development and your advancement as you move through your career.
Absolutely. I think one of the best mentors that I had for a while in my career, I had decided to moonlight and sell fine arts. And the woman that I worked with, she was probably 4'8". She was a spark. She was just a spark plug, redheaded woman, and she had more energy. I think she was like in her 70s at the time that I started working with her. She had more energy than anybody I'd ever met.
That's
And
awesome.
so she would coach me on how to do things. But the one thing that she taught me that I still use today, and I tell other people to do the same thing, is she said, you have to have a no file. And I was like, what's a no file? She said, at the time, she said, I don't care if it's on the back of a business card, 3x5 or whatever, but you have it with you all the time. And that no file is 10 customers that you want so badly and you cannot get your foot in the door. And she said, when you make a sale and you've got the notification and the contract signed, or they've let you know that they're going to do business with you, you're on such a high that you take out that no file and you start calling, and I guarantee you will get an appointment. because you're just there. You're so hyped up that there's no saying no to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have used that for many years, and it's always helped me. And the funny thing is, I sold some fine arts to a division of an insurance company, and it was a pretty good sale. And I called to tell her, and she goes, "I better be your second call." And I was like, "Okay, I get it." But yeah, she was an amazing woman. And Gary Myers and Bruce Schultz, the owners of United, had such confidence in me, and they were so supportive that it just, like you said, I was very fortunate, but I also was not afraid to ask questions. Can I help with this? Can I do this? Can you teach me this? And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that.
They think it shows weakness
Absolutely.
because I don't know something. But I know in my instance, I would rather have somebody say, I don't know that. Let me come back to you with the right answer or with the answer. It's a respect too. I'd rather get the correct answer than just something that they're making up.
Absolutely. Or you're wasting their time.
Exactly. But they're willing to put the work in too to give you the correct answer to make sure that they're being trustworthy on their end. Now, the printing industry has probably changed a little bit over the past several years in terms of more women are moving into the industry. Why do you think the printing industry is a really good place for women to thrive?
I'll start from my sales side when I used to go and meet with various different companies, and I would notice that there were more women in C-level positions. If I would go into 24-hour fitness or LA fitness or whatever, it was very female dominated running the executive team, but it was never that way on the production side of the industry. And so there were a lot of women in those positions. I think initially that it wasn't an industry that was sophisticated. It's not a beautiful industry because you're working on a workroom floor with a lot of equipment and a lot of stuff going on. So it's not one of those places that when you go in like I did, it's not a clean environment. You're working with cardboard sort cages, you're working with that, but the electric level was amazing to me. And I think if more women allowed themselves to see that and to understand the potential at the end of it, they would be more open to those positions. But again, if you don't see past the front door and the office, you're never going to know what those opportunities are.
Definitely. And honestly, even if you look at a lot of the shops now that have moved fully digital, it's a very different environment
It
than
is.
it was 5 or 10 years ago when it could have been a hybrid environment or a fully offset environment. Two very different locations
Exactly.
and different types of businesses at this point.
Mm.
But again, if you're not willing to go past the front door, you're never going to know what's in there.
Absolutely. And also in my world, in when I was selling on the postage side of things, you're dealing with the Postal Service. And I had an insatiable desire to learn everything I possibly could learn about the Postal Service and about postage and how it benefited my customers. So I saw a lot of that from the other side, where I would go in and talk to mail service providers. And even now, today, we were having a conversation with one of our customers, and they were having a conversation with one of their other print shops. And they came back and said to me, I was going through the presentation, Janie, and I caught them totally flat footed. They had no idea what zone-based pricing was and that it was even coming with the Postal Service. He said they would have just been caught totally by surprise because they weren't taking the time to learn it. And I think it's the same thing in the industry where you're moving from different kind of presses and you're moving from various different applications that you're selling to your customers. You have to understand that. You have to be able to ask that question from your customer. Do you know about this or do you know about that? You have to be confident enough in yourself that they may not know. And if they don't, now what do? You take them by the hand and you teach them.
Yeah, because even if you're talking about some of the discounts that you can get through the USPS, some
Mhm.
of them are with specialty finishes and other things that a lot of people don't know about or don't understand how they can work
Mhm.
with that. But there can be
Exactly.
substantial discounts that you can get with some of these programs.
Absolutely. Spending time with my customers is always a big deal to me. because I'm very much into consultative selling. And I find it interesting because I own my own business now. It's very successful. And I spend a lot of time with my customers, a lot of training time. And I look back with the people that I work with, because I have other consultants that will work with me. And to this day, I still laugh. It just makes me giggle that the only time I ever got a bad review, you get your yearly reviews, was from a manager that wrote me up in a sales position and told me I spent way too much time with my customers. And I'm like, that's fascinating that you would say that, because I'm one of your top salespeople. And maybe my method of selling is different than Tom over here, but it's effective. And I always look back at that and I smile, because I've never not been true to that. And it's got me to where I am today.
That was a matter of quantity over quality.
Absolutely.
He was looking for numbers. He was looking for, instead of 10 people, you're talking to 20, 30 people a day. But what's the quality of those conversations? Are you then just an order taker?
Absolutely.
As we're wrapping up, I'm going to ask my favorite question.
Okay.
Knowing what you know now, so for your history in the industry, all the things that you've gone through, all the things you've done, if you were starting out today, what advice would you give yourself?
To believe deeper, to recognize, and I'll talk about my faith here, but when I started my business, I asked God's guidance. This is your business. You take it wherever you want to take it, and I will honor you in every aspect of it. What I realized in this journey is I thought too small. I didn't think big enough. I put my own restrictions on myself, not anybody else. And it wasn't really until I started at United Presort Service and I started dealing with Gary. He came in, my first commission check was 23 cents. And he brought it in personally and handed it to me. And he's, Janey, this is going to get bigger. It's going to get a lot bigger. I didn't believe that. I believed it, but not that big a belief.
Yeah.
When he walked out of my office. And even today, with the numbers that I go over with my accountant and everything, I am still in awe of what Classic Mailing Solutions is and what it's been created to be. So to go back to your question, I would think bigger.
Believe in yourself and go for it, more or less.
You've got to jump off that cliff.
Hopefully with a really good parachute.
Yes.
Janey, thank you so much for taking some time today to chat. I really loved our conversation. It was great to meet with you and chat with you.
Nice meeting with you too. And thank you so much for having me. I can't tell you how much it means.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to celebrate and amplify the voices of women in the printing industry. If you have a story to share or know someone whose journey deserves to be highlighted, we'd love to hear from you. Together, let's continue inspiring and empowering the next generation of leaders. Until next time, keep leaving your imprint. This is Her Imprint. See you soon.